Like women have to get the major pieces of their life put together faster than men, which is also partly why men aren't under so much pressure to grow up. So because for the typical woman, she has to have her career and family in order pretty much by the time she's 35.
And I actually agree with that. And I never even thought of it that way. Women have a tighter pressure space in their mid-20s to 30s because, they are on a biological time clock, which means that they do have a little bit more pressure than, say, men do. I mean, technically, a man can help give birth to the next generation up until the day he dies. Women, unfortunately, cannot.
Because otherwise the options start to run out. And so that puts a tremendous amount of stress on women, especially at the end of their 20s.
I think I take issue with the idea of the typical woman because, all women are different.
Yeah, you make a good point. But again, the typical woman is someone who is, still fertile, who's healthy, who's happy, who's intelligent, hopefully, and just going through life the same as any man would. So, I mean, we'd be having the same argument about a typical man based on evidence of biology and social norms. So, I mean, you're taking issue with this? Really?
And that's what I want to just put another quote to you from the book.
Well, they're different in some ways and the same in others.
Okay, you say women become more vulnerable when they have children.
Well, of course they have to because they are the ones that carry the offspring. Their bodies have the reproductive organs to house a growing child. That's just the cards they were dealt with, ladies. Sorry. Yes, it makes women more vulnerable, which is why men generally be overprotective of pregnant ladies and take them away from extreme environments. Think about it. Would you want a 9-month pregnant woman who's, as big as a planet? Would you want a 9-month pregnant woman working at an oil rigs in minus 45-degree weather away from civilization for months on end? Because men can't give birth to children, we can't carry our own children, so we make up for that fact in order to protect women and provide them everything they need to have a healthy birth. That's why these gender roles were determined well long before feminism ever made a blip on the radar.
Oh, yes.
And you talked in one of your YouTube interviews about crazy harpy sisters. A simple question. Is gender equality a myth in your view? Is that something that's just never going to happen?
No, as you stated before, there's some similarities between the genders and there's some differences. A lot of people on the right side of the camp, or anti-feminist ones, basically are aware of these differences and accept them for what they are. Feminists and left-leaning people are always trying to break down those traditional gender roles or those stereotypes around gender. You're fighting an uphill battle, okay? Because biology always wins. Mother Nature always wins. And this is why it's ridiculous to me that there's feminists who are trying to tear down patriarchy, but in this sense, I don't think it's ever accomplishable. It's never going to happen, okay? And if anything, patriarchy has actually benefited women in the Western society than anything else before.
It depends on what you mean by equality.
Being
if you
treated
mean
fairly,
men and women,
getting the same opportunities.
They have all the same opportunities, and women actually have more because of gynocentristic points of views.
Fairly, we could get to a point where people were treated fairly or more fairly. I mean, people are treated pretty fairly in Western culture already, but we can.
But they're really not, though, are they?
Oh, but they're really not, because I perceive something to be true when it's been debunked numerous times by smarter people than I. But we're going to go off my biased sources, the ones that are filled with hate and rhetoric that are falsehoods. But we're going to go off from that because clearly that's what explains the world around us.
I mean, otherwise, why would there only be 7 women running FTSE 100 companies in the UK? Why would there still be a pay gap, which we've discussed at length? Why are women at the BBC saying that they're getting paid illegally less than men to do the same job? That's not fair, is it?
What kind of hours do they work? Are they there full time? Are they pulling their weight? Are they the same educated level as the men are? Like, there's so many different factors that you are conveniently forgetting here.
The first question, those are complicated questions. Seven women, repeat that one. There's
7 women running the top FTSE 100 companies in the UK.
Okay. Well, the first question might be, why would you want to do that?
Why would a man want to do it?
First you get the money, then you get the power, then you get the women.
I mean, there's a lot of money. It's an interesting job.
There's a certain number of men, although not that many, who are perfectly willing to sacrifice virtually all of their life to the pursuit of a high-end career. So they'll work. These are men that are very intelligent. They're usually very, very conscientious. They're very driven. They're very high energy. They're very healthy. And they're willing to work 70 or 80 hours a week, nonstop, specialized at one thing to get to the top.
And these sound like a lot of positive masculine traits. And so why would feminists want to break those down?
So you're saying women are just more sensible. They don't want that because it's not a nice life.
I'm saying that's part of it, definitely. And
well, yeah, it's been proven that women prefer a more balanced life where they balance their work life with their social life, friends and families, whereas men are more willing to put more of the weight on their shoulders and work those long hours, work that overtime, work that heavy machinery in extreme weather conditions in order to bring in more resources, more money, and therefore more status.
So I work
So you don't think there are barriers in their way that prevent them getting to the top of those companies?
Oh, there are some barriers.
See, and again, this is a leading question still. She's assuming that there's always these barriers that, women don't have the same opportunities, which they do. Has she ever stopped and thought that maybe the hurdles that are put in place of women in the workforce are put there by themselves?
Oh, there are some barriers, yeah, like men, for example. I mean, to get to the top of any organization is an incredibly competitive enterprise. And the men that you're competing with are simply not going to roll over and say, please take the position.
So let me come back to my
absolute
question.
all-out warfare.
Is gender equality a myth?
It's such a loaded question. Is gender equality a myth? Well, we have gender equality in the realm of opportunities and civility and treating everyone with respect and dignity. But when it comes to the outcomes, no, we won't. Because there are biological differences, there's mental differences, and even emotional differences between the sexes. And because of the amount of diversity that we have based on people's races, their sexuality, their sex, their very lives will be different from everyone else's. Because of that diversity, the equal outcome will never occur. Therefore, gender equality in the sense of the outcome will never be the same.
I don't know what you mean by the question. Men and women aren't the same, and they won't be the same. That doesn't mean they can't be treated fairly.
He makes a very valid point.
Is gender equality desirable?
If it means equality of outcome, then almost certainly it's undesirable.
So basically, he's got to reconfirm what I've just stated about equal outcome versus equal opportunity.
That's already been demonstrated in Scandinavia. Because in Scandinavia...
What do you mean by that? Equality of outcome is undesirable.
Well, men and women won't sort themselves into the same categories if you leave them alone to do it of their own accord. I've already seen that in Scandinavia. It's 20 to 1 female nurses to male, something like that. It might not be quite that extreme. And approximately the same male engineers to female engineers. And that's a consequence of the free choice of men and women in the societies that have gone farther than any other societies to make gender equality the purpose of the law. Those are ineradicable differences. You can eradicate them with tremendous social pressure and tyranny, but if you leave men and women to make their own choices, you will not get equal outcome.
And this is where a lot of people in my camp are expressing distaste for feminism, because feminism is putting pressure onto women and how they should act, what decisions they have to make, and blaming men in the whole process. So they're shirking all the blame or agency off of women's shoulders and putting it straight on to men when women fail in life or, make bad choices. It's all men's fault. So the men are getting upset at feminism because it blames them, it shames them, it attacks them simply based on their sex. And women who are anti-feminist are opposed to feminism because of the authoritarianism that it expresses and places that extra pressure on women. Why do you think nobody likes feminism?
Right, so you're saying that anyone who believes in equality, whether you call them feminists, call them whatever you want to call them.
I call them egalitarian or humanists, whatever. I definitely would not call them feminists.
Should basically give up because it ain't going to happen.
Only if they're aiming at equality of outcome.
So you're saying give people equality of opportunity, that's fine.
Oh my God, she's almost getting it, guys. Here's hoping she does.
It's not only fine, it's eminently desirable for everyone, for individuals and for society.
But still women aren't going to make it. That's what you're really saying.
God, she's such a defeatist. He didn't say that, did he?
Depends on your measurement techniques. They're doing just fine in medicine. In fact, there are far more female physicians than there are male physicians. There are lots of disciplines that are absolutely dominated by women. Many, many disciplines, and they're doing great. So
let me put something else to you from the book. You say the introduction of the equal pay for equal work argument immediately complicates even salary comparison beyond practicality for one simple reason. Who decides what work is equal? It's not possible.
Yeah, actually that makes sense because everyone is different and not everybody will do the same job in the same manner. So again, he's right. Who gets to determine what is same work for same pay? Like, is there an overall reaching puppeteer above us, like the Truman Show, who's watching our every move?
So the simple question is, do you believe in equal pay?
Very loaded question. He's explaining why there is equal pay, why there's a pay gap, and so on and so forth.
Well, I made the argument there. It's like it depends on
so
who
you don't
defines
believe
it.
in equal pay?
Not what he said at all.
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Because a lot of people listening to you will just say, I mean, are we going back to the dark
That's because
ages
they're actually
here?
not listening.
Bingo.
I'm
They're just
listening very
projecting
carefully,
what
and
they
I'm
think.
hearing you basically saying women need to just accept they're never going to make it on equal terms, equal outcomes is how you defined it.
No. He has never said that. He's promoting women to be more confident and negotiate their wages. He's saying that they should accept their choices in life that they want to pursue for their own happiness. That's what a lot of us are saying. He didn't say that at all.
No, I didn't
If I
say
was
that.
a young
said
woman
that equal...
watching that, I would go, well, I might as well just go and play with my Cindy dolls and
didn't
give up
say
trying
that.
at school because I'm not going to get the top job I want.
This is a perfect example, ladies and gentlemen. It's not Jordan Peterson that's telling this female reporter that she's never going to make it. She interpreted it as such, and she's telling herself that she's not going to make it. Notice this difference.
Because there's someone sitting there saying it's not possible and it's not desirable, it's going to make you miserable.
Desirable. That's what I said. It's a
Yeah,
bad
it's not
social
desirable.
goal. I didn't say that women shouldn't be striving for the top or anything like that, because I don't believe that for a second.
Striving for the top, but you're going to put all those hurdles in their way, as has been in their way for centuries.
No, he's not, but you are.
Then that's fine. You're saying that's
No.
fine.
No, that's not what he's saying at all. You're presuming what he's saying without actually listening to the words he is telling you. He is literally sitting in front of you and has stated that he wants women to be more confident. He wants men and women to be adults and not infants and pursue their own goals. I mean, like, is anybody else watching this debate? Am I watching something different here? Like, really?
No, I really
The
think
patriarchal
that's, I
system
really
is
think
just
that's
fine.
silly.
The patriarchal system is just fine. Yeah, because women benefit from it. It's not oppressing you in the slightest, sweetheart. Your interpretation, which is misconstrued, it's the one that's holding you back.
I do. I think that's silly. I really do. I mean, look at your situation. You're hardly unsuccessful.
Yeah, and I have
How do you
battled quite
manage
hard
it?
to get where I've got
Exactly.
to.
Good
So that's
for you.
okay. Battling is good. This is all
It's
about the fight.
inevitable.
Yeah, it's called competition. Remember that masculine trait where we negotiate our salaries and have a more gung-ho personality to take those risks needed to be a success?
But you talk about men fighting. I mean, let me just put another thing to you from the book.
Why
You're
wouldn't
saying
you have to
real-
battle for a high-quality position?
Well, I notice in your book you talk about real conversations between men containing, quote, an underlying threat of physicality.
Oh, there's no doubt about that.
What about real conversations between women? Is that something, or are we sort of too amenable and reasonable?
Women have conversations with other women. Usually it's around 50 Shades of Grey. Kidding. They talk about relationships, they talk about family, they talk about career choices, they talk about their hobbies, they talk about climate change and abortions and added pressure, what it's like to be a girl, stereotypes, jokes, like you're assuming that women don't have their own agency. Please look into that.
No, it's just that the domain of physical conflict is sort of off limits for you.
Well, you
it's
just said
rather
that I've
unfortunate.
fought to get where I've got.
Yeah, but
What does that make me?
Well,
a
I
sort of
don't
proxy
imagine.
man or
I
something?
don't
Does that make you a man? Well, only if you identify as one.
imagine that you've. Yeah, to some degree, I suspect you're not very agreeable.
Yeah, just keep digging yourself in deeper, JP. Just keep on digging.
So that's the thing. Successful women, I'm not very agreeable.
Right.
But
I've noticed that
successful-
actually in this conversation.
At least
and
we
I'm
can have
sure
a
it
go for it.
served your career well.
Successful women, though, basically have to wear the trousers, in your view. They have to sort of become men.
Well, they have to express a little bit more masculine traits, yes, but you'll never be a man.
To succeed, is what you're saying.
Well, if they're going
I've had to fight to succeed,
if they're
therefore
going to
I'm an
compete
honorary
against
man.
men, certainly masculine traits are going to be helpful. I mean, one of the things I do in my counseling practice, for example, when I'm consulting with women who are trying to advance their careers, is to teach them how to negotiate and to be able to say no and to not be easily pushed around and to be formidable. And you need to, if you're going to be successful, you need to be smart, conscientious, and tough.
And a lot of those, aren't necessarily masculine traits. To be smart and be tough and be confident, any human being can be that, regardless of what your sex is.
Well, here's a radical idea. Why don't the bosses the male bosses, shall we say, adopt some female traits?
Yeah, the really crazy ones where you misinterpret what people are actually saying and you go off by your confirmed biases against their character. Yeah, I'd rather not.
So that women don't have to fight and get their sharp elbows out for the pay rises. It's just accepted if they're doing the same job, they get the same pay.
But again, nobody's really doing the exact same work for the exact same pay. And there's a lot of factors that not only is sexist, there's a lot of different factors that contribute to that.
Well, I would say partly because it's not so easy to determine what constitutes the same job.
But that's because, arguably, there are still men dominating our industries, our society.
Yeah, the workforce is filled with men. Men take up the workload where women can't. And women take up the workload where men can't. It's a symbiosis, okay? This is why we work together as a species.
You scratch our backs, we'll scratch yours.
Well, Jules, the funny thing about my back is that it's located on my cock.
And therefore, they've dictated the terms for so long that women have to battle to be like the men.
No, it's not true.
Actually, a lot of civilization and laws were built around the comforts of women.
It's not true. So, for
Where's the
example,
evidence?
If you allow him to talk, he can give you that evidence. So stop interrupting.
well, I can give you an example very quickly. So I worked with women who worked in high-powered law firms in Canada for about 15 years, and they were as competent and put together as anybody you would ever meet. And we were trying to figure out how to further their careers. And there was a huge debate in Canadian society at that point that was basically ran along the same lines as your argument, is that if the law firms didn't use these masculine criteria, then perhaps women would do better. But
so this is where MRAs such as Karen Strawn, I think she's talked about this, where inserting more feminine traits would decrease the masculine hurdles affecting them. In a way, if we think about it, it's slightly lowering the bar. And what I mean by that is not saying that feminine qualities or traits are inherently bad. It's just that if we insert feminine traits into a dominantly male masculine trait field, which relies on competition, strength, intelligence, and things that are needed for a free market system, if you insert feminine traits in order to decrease the masculine ones, you are essentially lowering the bar. For instance, in the realm of firefighting, the reason why we have more male firefighters versus female firefighters is not because of sexism or that women are denied these roles. They aren't. We do have female firefighters. But what it is that firefighting is a predominantly strength and endurance field. These are people who are putting their lives at risk in order to put out fires, break down doors in order to rescue families who are burning inside their house. They're cooking inside of their house. Having masculine traits means you have to be strong enough to break down a door, to lift up multiple people, and still have the strength and girth to get out of the burning building. Now, generally, men are physically stronger than women. Generally. So what would you rather have? Would you have a 230-pound man who can bust down a door to save a family from cooking inside of their rave gravy? Or would you have a 90-pound woman who cannot break down a door and is to let the family roast to death? Okay? So the masculine trait is strength, durability, and endurance. A female trait, just to insert for identity politics reason, just because ma women's, you are essentially putting people at risk. You are putting the establishment at risk by lowering the standards. You have to meet the high standards. To those female firefighters who met the male standards of strength and endurance, have at it. I am glad that we have you on the firefighting team, because that just shows that you were strong enough to meet the standards.
The market sets the damn game. It's like...
And the market is dominated by men.
No, it's
So what
not.
I'm
It's
asking
not.
you-
The market is dominated by women. They make 80% of the consumer decisions.
Ooh, here we go.
That's not the case
What?
at all.
If you're talking
80%.
about people who stay at home looking after children, by and large, they are still women. So they're going out doing the shopping.
Yeah, they are. Because they have not only their own money from a part-time job or a full-time job that they're spending, they're also spending their spouse's money, aka the man's money. Why? Because the man goes out, works hard in order to get the high levels of salary to help sustain the lifestyle that which they found comfortable with and support not only himself, his wife or girlfriend, and their offspring. So if she has a part-time job and he's working full-time, she gets more time with the kids. She has more of her own time to do whatever she wants with her girlfriends. And yes, she will have access to money to buy a lot more stuff. In that dynamic, in that family unit, she has more space to be a consumer than her spouse does.
But that is changing.
They make all
Anyway,
the
what I want to
consumer
ask
decisions.
You, okay, so
the
what I wanna
market is
ask you-
driven by
okay,
women, not men.
Right.
Okay, and if you're a lawyer
And they
in
still
Canada...
pay more for the same sort of goods.
She's talking about the pink tax, which has also been debunked.
That's been proven that men, you buy a blue bicycle helmet, it's going to cost less than a pink one. Anyway, we'll come on to that.
Partly because men are less agreeable.
Also about the materials that go into women's shampoos versus men's shampoos. And hey, sister, because it's a free market system, what's stopping you as a woman in buying the male shampoo? What's stopping you from buying the cheaper male razors if a female razor does the same thing?
Right, so they won't put up with it.
I want to ask you, is it not desirable to have some of those female traits you're talking about? I'd say that's a generalization, but you've used the words female traits.
I feel like she has a lot of insecurity issues and that she thinks all men think that femininity is like weak or, frowned upon. It really isn't. Again, I'll state this. Where men lack, women pick up. Where women lack, men pick up.
Is it not desirable to have some of them at the top of business? I mean, maybe there wouldn't have
They
been
don't predict
a
success.
banking crisis.
They
if
don't
that
predict
had happened.
success in the workplace. The things that predict success in the workplace are intelligence and conscientiousness. Agreeableness negatively predicts success in the workplace.
So if you allow somebody to walk all over you and essentially become a carpet, you're not going to succeed. Seems pretty standard.
And so does high negative emotion.
You're saying that women aren't intelligent enough to run these top companies?
No, I didn't say that at all.
No, that's not what he said. That is a leading question. That is such a leading question. That's not what he said. Shut up.
Said that female traits don't predict success.
But I didn't say that intelligence wasn't.
conscientiousness
I didn't say that
do.
intelligence and conscientiousness
Well, you were saying that
weren't
intelligence
female
and
traits.
conscientiousness by implication are not female traits.
No.
I mean,
I'm not
that's very
saying that.
dangerous territory.
I'm not saying that at all.
Are women less intelligent than men, by and large?
No, they're not.
Don't you just love it? I'm surprised Jordan Peterson hasn't actually put her in her place. If it was me in that chair, I would have stopped her, kindly ask her to stop interrupting and to stop misinterpreting what I've said. I would speak to her as if she was a 5-year-old child at this point.
No, the data on that's pretty clear. The average IQ for a woman and the average IQ for a man is identical. There is some debate about the flatness of the distribution, which is something that James Damore pointed out, for example, in his memo, but there's no difference at all in general cognitive ability. There's no difference to speak of in conscientiousness. Women are a bit more orderly than men, and men are a little bit more industrious than women, but the difference isn't big.
And people who are sane understand this difference and are okay with it. It's people like you, lady, and feminists like you who think that that's a problem.
But that averages into
Plenty of men
conscientiousness.
who aren't necessarily as
Well, of
industrious.
course.
But we'll,
these are-
we'll,
okay.
we'll,
But no,
female
but
traits,
you asked me
though,
a
why
question.
are they not...
Feminine traits,
Why
let's
are they
say.
not desirable at the top of... Feminine traits, why are they not desirable at the top of business?
It's hard to say. I'm just laying out the empirical evidence. Like we know the traits that predict success.
But we also know, because companies by and large have not been dominated by women over the centuries, we have nothing to compare it to.
That's probably a good thing, because if it's this hard for you to understand simple truth, it's a good thing we don't have women in high positions of power. Just saying.
It's an experiment.
True, and it could be the case that if companies modified their behavior and became more feminine, that they would be successful. But there's no evidence for it. I'm not neither doubtful nor non-doubtful. There's no evidence for it.
So why not give it a go, as the radical
Because the evidence
feminists would
suggests,
say?
well, it's fine. If someone wants to start a company and make it more feminine and compassionate, let's say, and caring in its overall orientation towards its workers and towards the marketplace, then that's a perfectly reasonable experiment to run.
How about this? How about we have a woman starting an all-female company by sexually discriminating men, obviously, but see how long that lasts. Because most women understand how bitchy some other women can be. How that dynamic happens, I would love to see how successful that business goes. I wonder what would happen if there's a jar of pickles during the lunchroom board meeting and there's no man to open it up for them. Is that sexist to say that?
My point is that there is no evidence that those traits predict success in the workplace. And there's
Because it's never been
is,
tried.
Well, that's not really the case. Women have been in the workplace for, at least ever since I've been around, the representation of women in the workplace has been about 50%. So we've run the experiment for a fairly reasonable period of time, but not, certainly not for centuries.
Let me move on to another debate that's been very controversial for you. And this is, you got in trouble for refusing to call trans men and women by their preferred personal pronouns.
No, that's not actually true. I got in trouble because I said I would not follow the compelled speech dictates of the federal and provincial government.
Yeah, this is where a lot of people mistake his whole spiel there. He's talking about the government forcing us in using speech that we may disagree with. We have a right to disagree with that speech. We have a right to express our own thoughts. His stance is about compelled speech, the government forcing us in what to say and how to think. It's not so much about attacking trans people and their preferred pronouns. He said he can respect a trans person's pronouns, but what he doesn't like is people forcing him to. There's a difference.
I actually never got in trouble for not calling anyone anything.
Right.
That didn't happen.
You wouldn't follow the change of law, which was designed
Not
to
once it was
outlaw
law.
discrimination.
No.
Well,
that's what they said it was designed to do.
Okay, you cited freedom of speech in that. Why should your right to freedom of speech trump a trans person's right not to be offended?
Excuse me, the fuck did you just say?
Why should your right to freedom of speech trump a trans person's right not to be offended?
A trans person's right not to be offended. Right
not to be offended.
Because facts over feelings. Feelings do not dictate our laws. Minds do. Intelligence does. Logic does. If we're supposed to make everybody's feelings of getting offended occasionally a crime against humanity, there's going to be a lot of chaos, isn't there? Your feelings don't matter when it comes to human rights, okay? Everyone should have the same human rights, regardless if you get offended or not.
Because in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. I mean, look at the conversation we're having right now. Like you're certainly willing to risk offending me in the pursuit of truth. Why should you have the right to do that? It's been rather uncomfortable.
Well, I'm very glad I put you on the spot.
Ashley, he's been putting you on the spot this entire discussion.
Well, I'm very glad that I have exercised my freedom of speech.
You get my point. It's like you're doing what you should do, which is digging a bit to see what the hell's going on. And that is what you should do. But you're exercising your freedom of speech to certainly risk offending me. And that's fine. I think more power to you as far as I'm concerned.
Except you haven't sat there and... I'm just trying to work that out. I mean, I'm just trying to work that out. I'm just trying to work that out. I mean...
Ha, gotcha.
You have got me.
Ha, gotcha.
You have got me. I'm trying to work that through in my head.
Yeah.
It took a while.
It did, yeah.
Took a while.
I can't shake it.
You have voluntarily come into this studio and agreed to be questioned.
Mm-hmm.
A trans person in your class has come to your class and said they want to be called
That's never happened. and I would call them she.
So you would. So you've kind of changed your tune on that.
No, I said that right from the beginning. What I said at the beginning was that I was not going to cede the linguistic territory to radical leftists, regardless of whether or not it was put in law. That's what I said.
He stands against forced speech, all for the sake of identity politics that fuel the victim narrative. You're welcome.
And then the people who came after me said, oh, you must be transphobic and you'd mistreat a student in your class. It's like, I never mistreated a student in my class. I'm not transphobic, and that isn't what I said.
Well, except you've also called trans campaigners authoritarian, haven't you? I mean, isn't that
Well, only in the broader context of my claims that radical leftist ideologues are authoritarian, which they are.
Because they are. I, as a minority, have felt this radical authoritarianism by the left. Why do you think I call myself a conservative?
Someone who's trying to work out their gender identity, who may well have struggled with that, had quite a tough time over the years.
With it, yeah.
You're comparing them with, Chairman Mao, who
just the
saw
activists.
the deaths.
Not the trans person, the activists for trans people. Activists are the ones that are being authoritarian, not real trans people.
Millions of people. Well,
Just the
even if
activists.
the activists, they're trans people too. They have a right to say these things.
Yeah, but they don't have a
Isn't it
right to
grossly
speak for their whole community.
To compare them to Chairman Mao or, I could Pinochet, Augusto Pinochet. I mean, this is grossly insensitive.
I didn't compare them to Pinochet.
Well,
I did compare them to
He
Mao.
was an authoritarian.
He's a right-winger, though. I was comparing them to the left-wing totalitarians.
Oh, da 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 da, boom boom boom, da 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 da, boom boom boom.
And I do believe they are left-wing totalitarians.
Under Mao, millions of people died.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, and under Hitler, millions of people died.
there's no comparison between Mao and a trans activist, is there?
Why not?
Because trans activists aren't killing millions of people?
Not yet.
Sorry, but the UN must be firm with you. Let me see your whole palace or else.
Or else what?
Or else we will be very, very angry with you.
The philosophy that's guiding their utterances is the same philosophy.
The consequences are...
Not yet.
You're saying that trans activists could lead to the deaths of millions of people?
No, that again is a leading question. You are not listening. Clean the wax out of your ears.
No, I'm saying that the philosophy that drives their utterances is the same philosophy that already has driven us to the deaths of millions of people.
Okay, tell us how that philosophy is in any way comparable.
Sure, that's no problem. The first thing is that the philosophy presumes that group identity is paramount. That's the fundamental philosophy that drove the Soviet Union and Maoist China. And it's the fundamental philosophy of the left-wing activists. It's identity politics. Doesn't matter who you are as an individual, it matters who you are in terms of your group identity.
And this is where the left like to use identity politics. You're a woman, so you must side with Hillary Clinton. You're gay, so you must be against Trump. You're black, so you must vote Democrat. This is why we get frustrated with you.
You're just saying these things, though, to provoke, aren't you? I mean, you are a provocateur.
I never said
You're like
anything.
the alt-right that you hate to be compared to.
Now she's laying the claim that he's a provocateur. You are basing all your questions around this confirmed notion that he is a bad person by what your sources are. Your sources are wrong. You need to open up your mind as well as your ears and listen to the man sitting right in front of you. He's telling you his viewpoints. Stop getting it from a secondary or a tertiary source.
You want to stir things up.
I'm only a provocateur insofar as when I say what I believe to be true, it's provocative. I don't provoke. Maybe for humor,
You don't set out to
now
provoke.
and then. I'm not interested in provoking.
But what
Not in
about the thing
least.
about, fighting and the lobster? Tell us about the lobster.
Well, that's quite a segue. Well, the first chapter I have in my book is called Stand Up Straight with Your Shoulders Back. And it's an injunction to be combative, not least to further your career, let's say, but also to adopt a stance of ready engagement with the world and to reflect that in your posture.
Yeah, actually, it's been proven fact that if you stand upright with your shoulders back, you have better posture, and a lot of people will see you having confidence, and people respond to confident people. If you have a better posture and stand up straighter, you're more likely to be a more confident person.
And the reason that I write about lobsters is because there's this idea that hierarchical structures are a sociological construct of the Western patriarchy. And that is so untrue that it's almost unbelievable. And I use the lobster as an example.
Everything is a social construct, according to feminists.
Because the lobster, we divulged from lobsters in evolutionary history about 350 million years ago, common ancestor. And lobsters exist in hierarchies, and they have a nervous system attuned to the hierarchy. And that nervous system runs on serotonin, just like our nervous systems do. And the nervous system of the lobster and of the human being is so similar that antidepressants work on lobsters. And it's part of my attempt to demonstrate that the idea of hierarchy has absolutely nothing to do with sociocultural construction, which it doesn't.
It has everything to do with biology.
Let me just get this straight. You're saying that we should organize our societies along the lines of the lobsters?
I'm saying that it's inevitable that there will be continuity in the way that animals and human beings organize their structures.
God, he's so smart. Ugh. Fucking just take me. Take me already, God.
It's absolutely inevitable. And there is 1/3 of 1 billion years of evolutionary history behind that. Right? That's so long that 1/3 of 1 billion years ago, there weren't even trees. It's a long time. You have a mechanism in your brain that runs on serotonin that's similar to the lobster mechanism that tracks your status. And the higher your status, the better your emotions are regulated. So as your serotonin levels increase, you feel more positive emotion and less negative emotion.
So you're saying, like the lobsters, we're hardwired as men and women to do certain things, to sort of run along tram lines, and there's nothing we can do about it.
Partially right. That biology and Mother Nature plays her role. This is the nature versus nurture thing. Just because nature has determined this path for us doesn't mean that we can't tweak it. Doesn't mean that we can't improve on it. You're sounding very defeatist again, and this is why humanity as a species, the human race, has been very different from most other mammals, because we strive for better. We strive for more things. We strive for things like knowledge and enlightenment. So no, we don't have to stay in our lane, ma'am. We can jump off that lane if we choose to, but there's risk involved, and you have to be confident enough to jump.
No, I'm not saying there's nothing we can do about it, because it's like in a chess game, right? There's lots of things that you can do, although you can't break the rules of the chess game and continue to play chess. And your biological nature is somewhat like that, is it sets the rules of the game, but within those rules you have a lot of leeway.
That is a great analogy, actually. I like that analogy. Huh.
But the idea but one thing we can't do is say that hierarchical organization is a consequence of the capitalist patriarchy. It's like, that's patently absurd. It's wrong. It's not a matter of opinion. It's seriously wrong.
Aren't you just whipping people up into a state of anger? And
not at all.
Jordan Peterson does not own another person's feelings. He doesn't own your feelings. He doesn't own my feelings. I don't own a woman's feelings. I don't own my parents' feelings. Each individual person owns their own feelings. So this is why we say offense is taken, not given. When you can't keep control of your emotions, you're spewing it out everywhere, and then everybody has to deal with your insecurities, your issues, and your melodramatic emotional breakdown. It's not his fault that people get angry at him. It's the people getting angry at him that are at fault.
Divisions between men and women, you're stirring people up. You have any critics of you online get absolutely lambasted by your followers.
And by me, generally.
Sorry, your critics get lambasted by you. I mean,
If
isn't
they're
that
academics,
irresponsible?
not at all. If an academic is going to come after me and tell me that I'm not qualified and that I don't know what I'm talking about,
So
like,
you're
it's
not going to say to
seriously
your
not the
followers
same.
now, quit the abuse, quit the anger.
Well, we'd need some substantial examples of the abuse and the anger before I could detail that question.
There's a lot of it out there.
Let's take a more general perspective on that. So I've had 25,000 letters since June, something like that, from people who told me that I've brought them back from the brink of destruction. And so I'm perfectly willing to put that up against the rather vague accusations that my followers are making the lives of people that I've targeted miserable.
Jordan Peterson, thank you.
My pleasure. Nice talking with you.
Oh my goodness, that was a bit of a long response. Basically, I'll just keep this short and sweet for the conclusion. I side with Jordan Peterson. This was a perfect video that showcased a smart person and a dumb person who still doesn't get it yet. So what do you guys think? Was Jordan Peterson spot on? Did you agree with a lot of the questions that was asked by the female interviewer there? What are your feelings about this in regards to Jordan Peterson, compelled speech? My thoughts on this? Let me know what you guys think, okay? And until then, take care of one another, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.